Thank you for stopping by, everybody. I hope you enjoy the episode, and if you'd like, you can check out some of the other videos I've done on other books concerning the video game industry or social issues around video games.
Hey everyone, this time we looked at Faster Than Light, the Atari ST and the 16-bit computer revolution by Jamie Lendino. Now this is Jamie's third book, and I really applaud him for writing 3 books about this, 2 of which on the Atari computers. His first, I don't know if it was his first book, but the first one, at least with the Atari computers, is called Breakout. And that was really interesting because I didn't know anything about Atari's computer line, so I found most of that book really interesting. And Adventure, which was on the Atari 2600, which I also found, that was pretty interesting. I do know a little bit more about Atari's home consoles than I do about their computer line. So, like the other books, so like Breakout, I enjoyed parts of Adventure. And that's the problem with Faster Than Light. I like parts of Jamie's book. I don't like the entire thing. My main issue is Jamie tends to be a little bit unfocused when he's writing these books. He throws stuff in there that doesn't need to be in the book at all, or could have been saved for another book. At the end of this, he goes into the Atari Falcon, and I think that should have been its own separate book. And other things he doesn't really go into too much. Like, he doesn't really talk too much about the history of the ST and especially what was going on with Atari at the time. He dedicates part of the first chapter to it, and that's another criticism I have, is he'll dedicate parts of the chapters to important events, and then the rest of the chapter will be really just a confusing mess of software and video games that could have been pushed into their own sections. So overall, I really like the idea of this book. It's capturing the history of Atari's computers, which really hasn't been recorded very well, at least not from like a US standpoint. It's pretty well covered if you look at, especially the Nostalgia Nerd. He goes into a lot of this stuff in his videos, and I'll have a link to his channel below. But Jamie doesn't really do a great job of presenting the history of Atari's computer line. Especially in this book, he relies on the fact that you've read his previous book, which might not be the case because there's nothing to indicate this is like a sequel to Breakout or this is, in any way connected to it, aside from the fact that you have the author's name, Jamie Lendino. It's just kind of like, okay, awesome, this is about the 16-bit computers. What the hell does that mean, and why should I care? And he tries to set up why you should care about it in the first 3 chapters, and sort of give you an idea of the history of it, but it kind of falls flat for me. It's just sort of like, okay, great, what the hell is going on and why should I care about this? Now, Jamie's really passionate about the Atari computers because he grew up with them. But for somebody like me, I didn't grow up with these computers and had no idea that they existed until, honestly, about 3 or 4 years ago when I discovered more videos on the internet. I don't know anything about it, so it's just kind of like, okay, great, Jamie. And he never puts anything into context, and I know I'm really digging into him here, but there's a lot of serious issues that I have with what he says. He mentions things being popular, he mentions things being, selling well, and he mentions all of this other stuff, but he never puts it into context for you. So it's kind of like, great, it's popular because you said so? I don't understand, like, what does that really mean? Jamie, you need to sort of give me some more context. This is a problem a lot of scholarship on video games have, and I really hope that it gets corrected at some point. So we go into one of my major issues with this, and I'm sorry, but there's going to be mostly issues with the book in this video. He goes into really his game and software reviews. And this is something that Jamie has, for some reason, decided was important to do. But at the end of every chapter, for the most part, in all three of his books, he just throws in a bunch of software reviews at the end of each chapter, and it's like, what does these have to do with anything? I mean, he's throwing in just like random games, just like he did with Breakout and just like he did with Adventure. It's like, okay, Jamie, put some of these games into context for us and do a better job of saying these are like the milestone games at the time. These are the important games to come out. And the problem is he doesn't do this, and it's mostly just here are a bunch of games that I think are important for the Atari ST, and a lot of them are ports from other systems. So you'll have like Ultima 3, Ultima 2, and I think Ultima 3, or Ultima 3 and Ultima 4 get reviewed in here. And it's like, great, I'm reading another goddamn review of Ultima 3 and 4. Why am I doing this? Like, I know the games by this point. I don't need you to reiterate them. And there's like 2 different reviews of them in here, and it doesn't make any sense to me. Especially if you have his other book, Breakout, because there are reviews of Ultima in there as well. And it's like, okay, Jamie, can you just give me something that was done on this that needed to be in here? And what I would have liked to see is him take like a chapter or a few chapters and dedicate those to software. Like, take the first 5 chapters and explain more about what's going on with Atari, what was happening to them at the time, how like their whole ideas changed, and then do like another 5 chapters just on the computer line, because you need to set up like the actual story of the computer line. You can't hope that somebody read your first book and just sort of go with it and just dive right in. That's not going to work out too well. What I do like about this being in its own book is you can talk about, okay, this is the Jack Tramiel era of Ataris. So, great, we can go with that, but you need to do a better job of setting it up. And then just like another 5 chapters on like software and video games. Because in all honesty, even from reading this book, I got the idea that video games were not important for the Atari ST. Or they were just a bunch of stuff that was thrown in here and none of it was original to Atari at all. Now, there's one more thing that I want to touch on that's kind of like a pretty big missed opportunity here. And there's going to be another one as well, so I'll lump both of these in. I think Jamie could have done a better job with this book if he focused on really what Jack Tramiel did to Atari at the time, how he purchased it, and how sort of the culture of Atari changed. He touches on this briefly, and he touches on some of the reasons why Jack Tramiel left Commodore, but I think if he had gone deeper into that, it would have really set the book up better, and it would have been more of a historical reference point for readers. He doesn't do this, and I just really was hoping that he would have done it, because it would have made the book more meaningful. I didn't know a lot about the computer industry before I started reading all of these books and whatnot, and this didn't really add a lot of information to it. I got a few little nuggets about, okay, Jack Tramiel was forced out of Commodore because he wanted to bring his sons in as executives, and his partners were like, no, we don't really do that. So he left, bought Atari, brought his sons in, and scrapped a bunch of other computers that were going on, and scrapped their console that they were developing, the 7800, and just went with this Atari ST. And he did a lot of cost-cutting stuff, which I don't know if the point Jamie was trying to get was that harmed Atari in the long run, but that's kind of the feeling I got from reading this, that if Atari had been able to do their own R&D like Amiga had done, like Apple and like IBM, that they would have been farther along. And that just didn't happen. So I kind of wish that more had been focused on that, and it just wasn't. The other thing I wanted to really talk about that was kind of a missed opportunity is bringing up sort of what Atari like what the Atari ST meant for like the music industry. It's brought up time and time again in here, and I honestly think it should have been like its own dedicated chapter, or maybe have two chapters on it, where you just focused on like the music software and more the creative side of the Atari ST, because that seemed to me to be more important than the video games that were associated with it. I know this is a book. This is supposed to be a series about video game books, and I'm trying to tell you that they're not. Video games aren't important for this one, but that was the impression I got, which is really kind of sad. So to be honest, if you're interested in the Atari ST, this is a pretty decent book, but I would really recommend you look at the Nostalgia Nerds videos. He's got all of his nice history of the computer industry in a nice playlist for you, and it works out great. You can just go from start to finish, and it's awesome. Anyway, guys, that's going to wrap it up. I hope you guys all have a great day. The next book we're going to be reading is Game After. So I'm really looking forward to this one, and I'll see you guys next time. Talk to you all later.
Thank you for watching, everyone, and if you liked what you saw, please consider liking, subscribing, and even sharing the video. If you have a recommendation for a book to read, please leave it in the comments below, and have a great day, everybody.